will now be recorded.
Great. I'm going to open the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, March 29th at 6:33 p.m. I'll do a roll call vote for members present. Don?
I'm here.
Ed?
Here.
And I am here. I do not see a caller on there, so I'll assume Stephen is not on there and Larry is away. Okay, with that, would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Joe, can you put the flag up? Oh, great, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Joe, we're going to turn it over for COVID-19 updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would call upon Dr. Katie O'Neill, our health director, for her update on COVID-19.
In 1 second, Katie, could I just ask the members to mute their mics if they're not speaking? Thank you, Katie.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, I don't have great news this evening. We are back as a red community. Our numbers have increased like many of the other Cape towns. We're currently up to 634 cases just in the town of Harwich from the beginning. And my report says 44 active cases, but as of today, it's actually 48 active cases. And our positivity rate is over 5% at this point, which is unfortunate. We do have some good news. The vaccine is more widely available on Cape right now. We have over 3,000 full-time residents who have been fully vaccinated, and we have a little over 5,000 total residents who have at least one shot. So there is some good news. For residents that would like to be vaccinated, they can go to the Vax Finder at mass.gov. We also do have some good news starting tomorrow. We're very fortunate. Our Council on Aging and Fire, in correlation with the Outer Cape Health, will be vaccinating some vulnerable seniors starting tomorrow. I definitely want to acknowledge both Fire and Council on Aging because it's been a lot of work to get your work involved, and it's been really great to collaborate with Outer Cape Health. I'd really like to acknowledge all that work to get that done starting tomorrow. Testing is still available on Cape at either Outer Cape or Cape Cod Healthcare, and testing is typically available 7 days a week on Cape right now. And just a reminder to everyone that we still are in COVID, and I know there's a lot of people who are tired, and unfortunately we can't relax our standards quite yet. We still really need to make sure we're very diligent about wearing our mask, having good hand hygiene, and social distancing. So just a kind reminder to everyone that we really need to keep it up, and vaccine's not the sole source to end this. So just a friendly reminder to everyone that we do all need to keep being diligent. And that's my report for this evening.
Thank you, Katie.
Anyone has any questions?
Any questions for Katie? Okay, I'll turn it over to Cindy Williams from the Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening, everyone. A couple of announcements. Next month, April, is going to be a busy month for a few things. Cape Light Compact is doing their Main Streets Initiative. This was first announced that we were going to be doing just Harwich Port. It's now opened up to all of Harwich. This is a business initiative with Cape Light Compact. It's the week of April 27th through the 29th. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. We will be sending, I know Cape Light Compact is sending a letter. We're reaching out to all of our members to get everyone on board. This is a great way to save some money for the businesses, lower some costs, etc. So excited to be a part of this with the town and Cape Light Compact. Second big thing, April 27th through the 29th, Mass Hire is doing virtual job fairs. The Lower Cape segment will be on April 29th, and again, more info to follow on that as we get closer. As Katie said, we're still in COVID, so like everyone, the Chamber has had to pivot some of our things that we get to do. And one of the big things in the spring, as everyone is aware, has been the Toast of Harwich traditionally. Unfortunately, once again, this year, we are unable to do that in the spring. That is the largest fundraiser for the chamber. How we are funded is through membership dues, sponsorship, and fundraisers like the Toast of Harwich. So we will be instead doing a spring golf tournament, which will be May 26th. And there's information on our website to sign up for that as well. Other than that, that's it for right now.
Thank you, Cindy. Anyone have any questions for Cindy? Okay, moving on to old business. Discussion and possible vote, finalize, close, and sign the 2021 annual town meeting warrant. And we're going to start with number 1, which is to vote to place articles on the warrant. Last week, we voted the majority of the articles, leaving 5 that we hadn't voted. 3 with numbers that we were waiting for, OPEB stabilization, and unpaid bills from this past budget cycle. The other 2 articles were number 13, which was the, I believe, no, actually that's conservation, which was Article 33, Hinckley's Pond. So we'll start with the purchase of the 31 acres on Hinckley's Pond. I did notice, Joe, that the language had changed, putting care, custody, and control on the lot leading into Hinckley's Pond with the Board of Selectmen, and that was my major issue. So I'll open it up to you first if you want to add anything, and then to the other board members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to you and members of the board. We're joined by counsel this evening, Sharon Everett. I know Sharon is here to speak to the Selco article as that comes up, but I was able to work with Sharon today to affect the changes that you recognize, Mr. Chairman, and just confirm where you folks were last week. So both Sharon and I stand ready to answer any questions if the board is ready to take action on this article.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, Sharon, and thank you for joining the meeting.
No, my pleasure. Thank you. Good evening.
So I'll open it up. I think I'll start with board members. Don?
Michael, what number is that and what was mailed to us today?
Article 33.
33. Okay.
And that would be,
I have no comment. I was going to make a motion later, but I have no comment about it.
Ed, go ahead and unmute yourself.
And that was mailed to us today?
Yeah, mailed to us, yes.
Okay, let me find the email.
the email went to the board at 3:44 today.
All right.
And while we wait, Ed, the only change that I could visibly see was the care, custody, and control piece. Instead of Conservation Commission, it read Board of Selectmen.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, based on the discussion last week and the notes that Megan and I compared, there were 2 items that were brought up last week that I did have council address. The first, you'll note within the article itself, it makes reference to a single parcel, assesses parcel 81-G1, yet you will see in the explanation that it lists several parcels. And so the reason for that is the specific parcel that would be acquired by the town. The remaining parcels would be acquired either by Harwich Conservation Trust or the Division of Conservation and Recreation. So that was one question from last week. And then the second was, or more about changing it from care, custody, and control from Conservation Commission to Board of Selectmen, as you've already mentioned.
Thank you, Joe. If Selectman McManus isn't ready, I'll just ask one question of Michael Locke. I don't have the map in front of me. Can you just confirm that 81-G1 is the long, narrow lot leading in from headwaters to the pump house?
That's right.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. So this is the changes that were made to the article that were presented last week.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, and.
I have one other clarification when you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Okay, why don't we hear that?
Yes, G1 is the long, narrow lot that fronts Headwaters Drive and has a dirt road that leads toward the pond. It is the one adjacent and west of the Cape Cod Rail Trail. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so with these changes, are we going to circulate this back to the Community Preservation Committee for their approval?
I certainly can. My understanding is that when a presentation was made to Community Preservation, they were not aware that the board's vote was that the Board of Selectmen retained care, custody, and control. So my understanding is their vote was based upon the assumption that it would be handled by the Conservation Commission.
Don, did you have a comment?
No, when that's done, I do have a motion.
Yeah, well, you know, at some point they're going to, I mean, it was originally their article, and they need to approve it if we're changing it.
My only comment on that, Ed, is the Board of Selectmen has voted to support this with that criteria in it. And I know that the CPC committee has been made aware of it at least, and if they have to vote on it, I'm willing tonight, because we have to sign this warrant to take a motion on this and to get it on the warrant. Elaine?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to let you know that we have requested an executive session with the CPC committee, so we will be speaking to them at their next meeting.
Good.
Don?
Yeah, I'm basically going to where the chair was going. I understand what Selectman McManus is trying to say, but if we got involved with a problem, we could always perfect that by motion to the article. But tonight we have to print our recommendations, and this is exactly what we've already previously been on record as agreeing to. So I would make a motion. It's not about placing it because it's a CPC article. So I'd make a motion that we support it as written.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go a roll call.
If you don't vote on this, Ed, it's going to have no recommendation.
No. Well, tonight it only takes two to have a recommendation. You know, I'm just concerned, you know, we could have made these changes to what they had originally proposed by making a motion at town meeting, putting these things in place. You know, I just, you know, hope that nobody challenges this, because this wasn't the article that CPC presented.
Mr. Chair, may I ask what the CPC presented?
Go ahead, Sharon. Actually, we'll get that answered. Joe, do you want to answer this? And then again, I would ask everyone that's not speaking to please mute their mics when they're not speaking.
Sure, it's my understanding from my participation in Community Preservation's meeting last week that the Community Preservation Committee was presented with a proposed article that retained care, custody, and control by the Conservation Commission. And it's my further understanding that no one advised them until I spoke last week that the selectmen's vote was to make that specifically the care, custody, and control of the Board of Selectmen and not the Conservation Commission.
Would it be prudent? Could I ask why? It's just the reason I ask is because usually 99% of the time, custody of conservation property, especially when it's purchased with CPA funds, is placed with the Conservation Commission. Maybe there are issues that I'm not aware of. in which case I'll just move on, but I'm just wanted to say that it's a bit unusual.
Thank you, Sharon. Don, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'll be the bad guy here. The Board of Selectmen did that, Sharon, as an actual programmatic decision. At the moment, we don't have a lot of confidence in the Conservation Commission having jurisdiction over that. There are other issues that we have with them. We were comfortable if we retained control. We had considerable discussion over that. And as far as I understand it, and this is through you, Mr. Chair, to the Town Administrator, the actual article did not get written by CPC. It was KP Law that did the language. So that perhaps they were unaware that we had taken a voted position that we did not want that.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call for a roll call vote on this. Don?
Aye.
Ed? You got to unmute yourself, Ed.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. 3-0. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman?
Go ahead.
Mr.
Go
Chairman,
ahead,
if
Joe.
I may. So I've struggled with this, and I would ask the board. I've seen the phrase Hinckley's spelled both ways, with and without apostrophe. Looking at the assessor's map, it looks like it reads without an apostrophe. Can the board give some direction on what the correct spelling is understood to be?
Tomorrow.
Very good, thank you.
If anyone wants to look it up tonight, I will let you interrupt us and tell us. But I do have a pond map, Joe, and I do not have that pond map handy, but I believe it's without an apostrophe.
I can confirm, I'm looking at the assessor's map, and that comports with that.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the next one that we hadn't voted, which is Article 38, and that is the easement on Harbor Road by Selco Partnership. So I guess I will, Joe, do you want to just give us an update or turn it right over to Sharon?
Well, no, I would like to give an update. Sharon, again, was able to get this updated based on the board's preference, referencing back to a sketch plan. And so if this is to be placed in the final warrant, I will transmit a large copy of the plan by memo to our town clerk tomorrow so that it comports with the language that Attorney Everett has put in the article indicating that the sketch is on file with the town clerk. Other than that, I would turn it over to Ms. Everett, our counsel, and I don't know if I saw Attorney Klasnick on the line, but I know that Sharon has done some work on this and may be able to answer better than I.
Okay, I will turn it over to Sharon.
I think that the request came from Verizon, as you know, to place telecommunications equipment on a pole that's owned by, I think, AT&T. I'm not sure. But they originally hoped to put in overhead wires, electric wires, but that did not turn out to be feasible. So they asked for a 10-foot wide easement.
Sharon, if you don't mind, I'm going to cut you off, only because the board has heard all of this, so we know. So I think what I'd rather do is just open it up for questions from the board. The language changes that are in the newest warrant answered the questions that I had, and I wanted it to reference a map. But we definitely all are clear on why they want the underground and the fiber optics. So if that's okay with you, I'll turn it over to the board to ask specific questions.
Absolutely.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I had a specific question before, and I still have it. If this indeed were to evaporate, Sharon, the conclusion of use, I don't see the language in there that actually says that the easement's for the express purpose of that, and they're not going to retain it to the extent that they're no longer using it for that purpose.
I think when we draft the easement is for the sole purpose of powering the equipment that's on the pole. So
Why would the article actually express that? Town meetings conveying the authority for the easement. We don't have that authority on our own without town meeting. Why wouldn't they be told that?
Absolutely. If that's what you wish to say, we can certainly put that in.
Sharon, if I may, I think what I heard you start to say was the actual easement agreement that we prepare with Selco will have that language in it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Ed? Go ahead and unmute yourself, Ed.
I have my dogs around who routinely go off, so I keep on muting, but in any event, will we be including a sketch plan in the warrant?
Yes, I received a sketch plan this afternoon, and I believe, Joe, that you received it maybe last week. And that's what I reference in the warrant article. And
Okay.
it further states that a copy is going to be kept on file with the town clerk.
Okay, but will that be included in the printed warrant that the voters get? Because that's been our usual practice.
In that case, please go ahead and include it. I wasn't sure whether you wanted to or not.
Yeah, okay, we can, I think if we have a copy of it, we can reduce it and staff can insert it.
We do have a copy.
Yep.
Yeah, and with that,
Joe, is that okay? I mean, I know it's
It's
okay.
certainly, it's okay to add. I don't know about the quality itself, you know, as to the printed version, but I think it's if I can use the phrase, a belt and suspenders approach. It will be on file with the clerk's office and it will be reproduced in the warrant itself.
Okay, thank you. I'm comfortable, Don, with it being in the agreement that we're ultimately going to have to approve in the language of the easement agreement. I'm comfortable with that. If you're more comfortable having a 1 or 2 liner in the warrant and the town administrator can pull it off between now and tomorrow night or whenever we have to go, we're not going to view it tonight, but I would leave that into the motion if that's your interest. But go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I would like just one line that we vote to approve to the express purpose of its use in wireless communication.
Okay, you want to go ahead and make a motion that includes that and and just reference the diagram that will also be added to the town meeting warrant?
With the inclusion of the language that ties it to wireless communication and the site map that Ed's talking about, I move that we encourage, accept, and adopt.
So this one would be inclusion in the warrant. We'll go back.
Okay, I move that we include it in the warrant with that language.
Okay, can I get a second?
second,
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Ed?
aye,
And I'm an aye.
Mr. Chair, if I could go on, I move with the language included that we urge, accept, and adopt.
second,
Okay, moved and seconded to accept and adopt Article 38. Roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Joe.
sorry, before you call the vote, you may want to recognize Chairman Chory. I want to make sure that we reflected the FinCom action correctly, and I'm not sure that I was able to do that. John, can you speak to if that's all right, Mr. Chairman, through you to the chair?
Absolutely. John?
Want me to tell you how we voted as the FinCom committee?
Yes, please.
Okay, we voted to definitely postpone this article. 7-0.
And that was the easement, John? I know the numbers have changed, but you're sure that's for the easement?
That is for the easement, Michael, number 38, yes.
Okay. And then, so when you have your next meeting, if you could take this back up, I didn't hear conversation as to why you didn't, but if this would be one, or we can reconcile the day of town meeting and maybe change that.
Okay, I guess, I think, if I think correctly, we definitely postponed it because we didn't have definitive information and the selectmen were going to vote on it tonight. I can revisit it tomorrow night. We're having a meeting and I can revisit it with our committee.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, John.
Great. You're welcome.
And just so we're clear, John, it was a 3-0 vote with the 3 selectmen that are on here. And now
Okay.
we are going to include a plan in the warrant and language that terminates it if they stop using it.
Okay.
And this is for a short run of fiber optic cable and some fiber optic equipment at the top of a telephone pole at Witchmere Harbor. And those plans are available. You can get those plans from Patty or Danielle tomorrow before your meeting if you want.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Joe, we're clear on that one?
Yes, if I can work with Council Everett to capture the language that the board's looking for.
And Sharon?
If I might, I'm not looking for anything extensive. I'm just looking for it. It's for the express purpose of, because when that purpose goes away, the easement will go away.
Correct.
Sharon, we're okay with that?
Absolutely. I'll send you a revised article.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And that would just go to Joe Powers at this point. We're not going to have time to vote on that again before, but Don's comfortable with your coming up with a 1 or 2 liner.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, moving on to Article 40, which is the
Did we
roof.
complete the vote on accept and adopt?
We did. Right, Joe?
I had that as 3-0.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, now we're on to the Article 40, which is the roof at 5 Bells Neck Road, the old youth center and the old schoolhouse out in West Harwich. And if board members remember correctly, this is for a $50,000 roof repair. Some language has been added, I believe. And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, if we come up with an RFP and put this out and that passes to be allowed to sell, we may not have to do this work.
That's correct. And if I could just elaborate, Mr. Chairman, as you may recall, last week, the board directed me to swap them out. So Article 17, which you've already dispatched by a 4-0 vote to adopt, is the authorization of the sale. The roof repair is now held separate and distinct, as you see in Article 40.
Thank you, Joe. Questions from board members? Ed?
No.
Don?
No,
And I get a motion to include Article 40 in the warrant.
So moved.
second,
Yeah, and we'll just add into the motion for the amount of $50,000 for a roof repair at 5 Bells Neck Road. Moved and seconded. I will start with Ed this time.
can I just ask a question before we vote?
Go ahead.
If indeed 17 passes, do we reserve the right to recommend indefinite postponement of this?
Joe?
So sure, you can. I suppose the question may be asked of me, what's the need? And again, if I can just explain, I'm just trying to make sure that if there is any delay in the sale process, that we still have money available if we need to keep it in sellable condition. But
But
you're
not
absolutely right,
necessarily use
Selectman
money?
Howell, you could.
But
Sorry,
not necessarily use the money unless we authorize it, is that correct?
correct.
Okay,
Okay, roll call vote. Ed?
Aye.
Don?
aye,
And I'm an aye. Now, can I get an accept and adopt on the same article?
And move that we accept and adopt Article 40.
second,
The amount- Great, roll call vote. Ed?
If I could, before,
Go ahead.
just a comment, even if this passes, it doesn't actually require that we spend the money. It just provides the appropriation for the determination of whether to do it or not is at the discretion of the selectmen.
Right.
Whether we feel it's necessary to preserve the historical asset of the town.
I agree.
Okay. I'll vote aye.
Don?
aye.
And I'm an aye. 3-0 on that one as well. Joe? Is there any other articles that any board members wish to bring back for either 1 or 2? Vote to withdraw or vote to place?
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify that if there's not an affirmative vote to place, it's just the administrator's draft warrant, and it does not carry forward. So there were a couple that we took no action on as a 2-2 tie, but unless there's an affirmative vote to put them on, 'cause I would be willing to make the motion to not, which number is the two that we deadlocked?
And Don, I mean, I'm not changing my vote on those, and I don't believe you are either, based on what you just said. So I don't think we need to even go there. More importantly, you know, and I would let other board members, I have a concern with Article 30, which is the cemetery. You abstained on that. So I just wanted to ask some questions about Article 30 and then open it up for the board if there was anything else. But if you want to make a motion not to, I don't know what numbers those were, but.
Well, I
So
defer to the town administrator. Is where we left it, I understand that they would not be included. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see that just because Larry's missing that, I don't see that it would change anything. I could make a motion, but it's not going to be on the warrant, and it's still not on the warrant.
I don't think you need to make a motion. Ed, anything?
Well, I wasn't exactly sure what articles you were talking about, but in any event, the articles I'm thinking of, with only 3 of us here, I know I'd be on the losing side if they were brought back up. You know, I think it's too bad. We have a committee that put in a lot of work developing the articles over multiple years, and I think it's you know, not to give them their chance at town meeting is unfortunate, and you know, sort of you know, I think one of the reasons why we're having some problems recruiting people to join committees. But that being said, let's move ahead with approving the warrant for the town meeting.
Okay, so Joe was asked a question at the Finance Committee meeting that I couldn't answer, and that was related to Article 30 cemetery and whether or not an actual.
Yeah, before we go on, can I address what Mr. McManus said?
Sure, go ahead.
I know that it could be framed that way, but we all work for the town, and the town's involvement is extremely important in regulatory matters. And we've just burned through another year. Normally, there would be public hearings that would be widely circulated. That couldn't happen this year. So while I'm always grateful for people who volunteer to be on committees, they nonetheless have a reciprocal responsibility to the townspeople. And the townspeople should have had an opportunity, and they will next year. So it's not a question of us dissing anybody.
Okay, thank you, Don. Back to Article 30, cemetery. I was asked if there was a legal opinion given on this, Joe, and I think my homework tells me there has not been an actual legal opinion given on this. We're not sure who owns the land. Most of my questions were answered with, we can address some of them during the procurement, but I'm not sure that the church that may own the land even knows that they may have to do the procurement on this. So could you give me a little insight on this one?
Certainly. So it's my understanding that we're still vetting through council the question of ownership by reviewing the documents that are readily available and that have been provided by the cemetery administrator. So in the meantime, the question that was posed to Attorney John Giorgio was, given how this proposal was presented, is this something that the town can do going forward? And the answer in both instances was yes. There's nothing preventing the CPC from using these funds in support of the church if they're the ones to take on the project. It doesn't run up against, I believe it's the, I'll have Sharon bail me out, but I want to say the Acton case. I think it was the town of Acton or one of those, where the discussion was on using public funds for religious purposes. This would not rise to that level of a religious purpose. So the town may fund this project regardless of who the owner is determined to be. Having said that, Sharon, I don't know if you have heard or have any update on the ownership question?
I reviewed the materials, and there's not sufficient information, in my opinion, to definitively answer who owns it. I think we need to do additional research and go back to my examiner to get you an answer. So it was something I was going to discuss with you, Joe, as to whether you authorize that kind of work to be done.
Mr. Chair, it might be helpful here.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I'm actually a trustee and the treasurer of the church. We did not make the request ourselves. And even if we had wanted to sell the land to the town at any point, it's set up similarly to the Catholic Church, where we don't own the property that we're on. We're subject to the New England Conference. That cemetery and the church have been there since the early 1800s. I believe it's 1803. And at no time was that ever conveyed to the town. So that's why I didn't recuse myself. That's why I abstained. The church did not make this request. The church found out a request was made, is really what occurred. And while it is a public place to be able to walk around, I definitively can tell you that the church owns this and the church didn't sponsor this.
Thank you, Don. Joe, just a formality question. Town meeting, we're going to get together with Finance Committee prior to the meeting, and we will reconcile some articles. At that point, can the board, if the board so chooses, withdraw its support for this project?
I would have to defer to council on that. I would say yes, you can change your recommendation, but I'm not an attorney, so I would rather defer to one.
Sharon?
So it's my understanding that the CPC recommended this article?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Although you may not support it, I would recommend that you include it in the warrant, because that's the recommendation.
Yes, and it will be in the warrant.
Okay, and then you can definitely speak to it as to why you don't support it, but as long as it's there in the warrant, that would be fine.
Great. Joe, if we could set up a meeting or add Robin to one of our agendas in the near future, I think I'm willing to leave it alone tonight. Don abstained. Both Ed and I voted for it. I'm willing to leave it alone, but I think we need to get a little bit more information. It appears that the property owner the potential property owner may not want this project.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I add one more thing?
Go ahead, Don.
There was an addition made to that property in 1994, Sharon. And it was subject to a site plan review. At that point also, we were the applicants and owner of the property. So you can go back to that should you desire. And as a matter of fact, some of the cemetery had to be reconfigured in order to make the addition. So there is no question in my mind that it's all part of the parcel that we own.
Who's we?
The church.
My church. I'm a trustee and the treasurer of the church, just in case you missed that before.
I didn't know which we you were referring to. Because you're
Okay,
also
well,
a member of the town.
we, the church, had never conveyed that property. And it
Okay.
was actually subject to a site plan review in the early mid-90s.
Sure. And Michael?
Okay, so I'm gonna, Ed, do you have any other comments?
Yeah, just a comment that, as to whether we can vote one recommendation now and another recommendation later on. If we can take a vote on the budget and change it, make changes to it the night before town meeting, which we've done routinely over the years, we can change a recommendation that we have on an article.
Great, thank you, Ed. Before we get off this subject, all you got in your packets tonight a memo by Joe Powers Lots of people CC'd, but it says updates and corrections for the 2021 annual town meeting warrant, and it was dated March 29th. In there's a list of changes that Joe made, and he outlined to us the Scribner errors before we voted these articles last week. So most of these the board is aware of. Some of the dollar amounts have changed. Does the board desire to go through this list, or are we okay with the list in as Joe presented it?
I'm okay.
I think I'm okay too.
Okay. And Joe, you're okay with that as a consensus that we don't need to go through each one of these?
Yes, thank you. There are two other items, though.
Yep. My only ask is that you please email a copy of this before to John Chory tonight or tomorrow morning so that he can have it for his meeting tomorrow night for any questions that come up from his board.
Will do. I've already added language from Attorney Everett in that article. I'll add any changes this evening as well as the sketch and send that out widely.
Thank you. John, do you have anything?
Are you folks going to vote on 43, 44, and 45, the stabilization fund, OPED, and prior unpaid bills?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
We'd like to make the motions on 43.
If I could, one question before we move on to that.
Go ahead, Ed.
On the article regarding the property, you know, up by the Cranberry Bog, and Hinckley's Pond.
Article 33, yes.
Yeah. Are we also going to have in the warrant a sort of a sketch map of the location of that?
Defer to the town administrator, but I think if that's the pleasure of the board, we will have one.
I would have to defer to either Real Estate Open Space, CPC, or Harwich Conservation Trust to provide that. We don't presently have anything like that on file.
You know, it's just, in the past, it's always been the practice to have at least a location so people know what part of town we're talking about when these things come up.
Mike Lack has a plan that he could share with you, and I can send it to you too.
Right.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes, I saw a shared screen earlier that showed tax map 81 with lot G1 indicated. If that suffices for the board, that could be an adequate map.
Michael, that for me at least, that would be a start. But I do think whoever's going to give a presentation on this on town meeting floor, as much as we can give the voters ahead of time, but I assume that you're going to stand up at town meeting and explain what this, for somebody else, what this project is and the purchase in totality.
Yeah, I see. As part of the larger whole. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You know. It's just not affecting the strip of land on the north side of the bike trail, but the article covers the whole the whole area.
Right, in the italicized explanation of the article.
Yeah, yeah.
Agreed. Happy to help.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just sent the plan to Joe.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, moving on to Article 43. Can I get a motion to include that in the warrant?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I move that we place under the warrant Article 43, the stabilization fund in the amount of $1,074,171 estimated.
Can I get a second on that?
I'll second it. I have a few questions.
Go ahead, Ed.
Is that what we're recommending being added to the fund?
That is, Ed, that's what we're going to put into the fund. Some of it is returned money that we promised the taxpayers we would put in last year. And then some of it is in addition to that. Joe, do you have the breakdown?
I'm just looking for that now. I should have it in a moment.
It's roughly 50/50, as I understand it, Mr. Chair. It's like 500,000 and change from last year, a similar amount from this year.
I believe you were right. I believe it's 574 and the change from last year, and we're adding 500 for this year.
Okay. And what will that bring the fund up to?
I do not have that information available. I'm not sure if our finance director is on.
I see Carol Capola, and her light just went on. Carol, the floor is yours.
I can have that number for you in just a minute, okay? I'm sorry. I'll be right back with the number for you.
Thank you, Carol. Does the board want to take a vote on this in the meantime and just have the information afterwards?
I would
Yeah.
accept that.
That's fine, you know, that was one of the pieces of information we had asked for last week. So,
Okay. Thank you. I'll do a roll call vote. Ed,
aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I am an aye. Can I get a motion to accept and adopt?
Mr. Chair, I recommend we accept and adopt Article 43, Stabilization Fund. In
The
the
amount
amount of $1,074,171 estimated.
Excellent. Can I get a second on that?
Second,
All right, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Ed,
aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I am an aye. To keep this moving, I'm going to go on to OPEB, and then we will, when Carol's light goes back on, we'll call back upon her. We are on
Mr.
Article.
Chair,
Go ahead.
I make a motion that we include in the warrant Article 44 OPEB, raise and appropriate from available funds a sufficient fund of money added to the OPEB trust fund and actually thereon at an estimated cost of $500,000.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ed,
aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I am an aye.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend, accept, and adopt of Article 44 OPEB Trust Fund in an estimated amount of $500,000.
I think we just did that one, Don.
I thought we were including first.
We did.
Okay.
Joe, you got both of those, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, we're on to Article 45, Don. And actually, I'll pause you right there because Carol Capola is back. Carol, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. The current balance in stabilization is $4,162,326. And just in case you were looking for the OPEB number, it's $3,680,026.
Great. And Carol, do you have the breakdown of what we're paying back from last year that we took out of stabilization versus and what we're putting in this year?
So the question that was asked prior was, the answer was correct. It's the amount that was used to balance the budget in FY21 of $574,171, I believe that was the amount, and then another $500,000.
Thank you very much, Carol. Any questions for Carol, Don, or Ed?
Yes, so the numbers you just gave, that's what the funds are at right now?
Well, that was, I think, December 31st.
Okay, so when we add the $1 million in the stabilization, it'll go from $4 to $5 million or whatever the specific.
That's correct.
And the OPEB fund will go from what to what?
So at the end of December, there was just under $3.7 million in that fund. So with the $500,000 in this article, in addition to the $250,000 in the proposed budget and the $50,000 in the water enterprise fund budget, so that'll be another $800,000 that would be added to the nearly $3.7 million.
So we'd be at $4.5 million.
Mhm.
So between the two stabilization funds, we'll be holding in reserve 9.5 million.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed. Anything, Don? Okay, I'd look for a motion on Article 45, pay unpaid bills from last year.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Joe.
I apologize. I misspoke. I understood that you took both votes on 43. I did not have that you took both votes on 44.
I have to
Yeah.
say Don was right.
Yeah.
I was going to say it for you.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's trying to tell you, Michael.
Go ahead, Don.
I wasn't going to admit it, but yeah, he is.
Go ahead, Don.
Okay, I move that we recommend accept and adopt on Article 44 OPEB trust fund in the amount estimated cost of $500,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept and adopt Article 44 in the amount of $500,000. Roll call vote. Ed,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I am an aye.
Mr. Chair, moving on, Article 45, to fund prior year's unpaid bills and the estimated amount of $21,349. I make a motion to include that in the warrant.
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Joe.
if I may, the vote of the board last week was 4-0 to place in the warrant and
Okay.
4-0 to accept and adopt. You were just waiting for the confirmation of the number.
Okay, so do you need any action from us tonight at all?
I would just say that if the board wanted to affirm that now you know the number, you stand by the original vote.
Consensus okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, hearing no objection, we're fine with it.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Attorney Sharon Everett. I think, Sharon, that's everything you were here for. So I think we're good if you're good.
Thank you, Sharon. She froze. Okay, Joe, do you need any other action on the final warrant?
Well, I do in the sense that if the board is ready to, well, I don't know that you can close it because FinCom is going to make their recommendations, but, well, bear with me, I'm babbling. I do think you can close the warrant insofar as you do not anticipate or would allow any further articles to be added. And so you should take the action of closing the warrant, meaning that no further articles will be included, if that's the will of the board.
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the warrant.
I'll second that for discussion. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I think we should close and accept the warrant articles as we have voted on them and include any additional recommendations or explanations that are provided by the FinCom.
I would agree to that only to the extent that that we close it with the articles that have been affirmatively voted on to the warrant.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yep. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I understand this to be a warrant that contains 49 articles that have been placed in the warrant by the Board of Selectmen.
That is correct.
Yep.
So I'll accept that additional language from Ed.
Okay. And Ed, you're okay with the second on that, with the additional language?
Yep.
Okay. With no other discussion, I'll do a roll call vote. Ed,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I am an aye. Next on the agenda is discussion and possible vote to finalize, close, and sign the 2021 town election warrant.
Mr.
Joe?
Chairman, if I may, I would like to address my glaring error in the draft that you have. The date of the election is not going to be 2 years ago. The date of the election should read May 18th, 2021 in the header, as well as in the body of the document. So again, May 18th, 2021 is the correct date. Other than that, Mr. Chairman and members, this is a correct warrant as verified by the town clerk and council.
Oh, I was so hoping to have a Back to the Future.
So close.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I would move that we finalize, close, and sign the 2021 warrant, town election warrant for a date of May 18th, 2021.
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ed,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I am an aye.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Chairman, members, for that.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you,
Okay.
Megan.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just said thank you, Megan.
Great, and thank you, Megan. On to C, ongoing discussion comprehensive wastewater management plan, CWMP, discussion on GHD sewer CAD modeling kickoff. And I see Russ is online and Dan Pelletier's online. So Joe, if you don't have anything to add, I'll send it right to Dan Pelletier. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. How you doing?
Good.
So to pick up from last Wednesday, so as the board may recall, the town just recently signed the agreement with GHD to begin the sewer CAD model for the remaining sewer sheds in the CWMP. In an effort to make this process and all things sewer more inclusive and transparent, we wanted to bring GHD in for a sewer CAD kickoff meeting with the board to discuss the process and first steps. So seeing how big the agenda is, I will keep my part short and turn it right over to Russ.
Thank you, Dan, and good evening to the board, Mr. Town Administrator, and everybody. Thanks for having me speak tonight. Just real quick before we start, there was a discussion on Hinckley's Pond, apostrophe or no apostrophe. Anytime I go to look for historic names of water bodies, I find the 1900 USGS topographic maps, a very good resource that are available on MassGIS, and there is no apostrophe. So we can all breathe easy. Yep, that absolutely. We can all breathe easy. And moving on to the sewer CAD. So what we're doing now, just to refresh everybody's memory, is we had a brief assignment before where we looked at a small area of town. It had 4 pump station sites, and we developed the gravity sewers and low pressures and the cost estimates and all that sort of stuff. But now we have a bigger assignment. We have the whole town. And my question for the board tonight, I'm going to ask the question, then I'm going to talk a little bit and give a recommendation. But my question is regarding communication, public input, those type of aspects. When would the board like to see us come back with an update? And I'll give what my suggestion would be, and then we can talk about it. One of the most critical steps with the sewer modeling, the first thing we want to do is identify pump station sites. Depending on where the pump station sites are going to dictate how much gravity sewer we have and where we have low pressure sewer. For the area that we're looking at within town, you're probably going to have between 30 and 40 pump station sites. And an ideal pump station site would be a low-lying elevation that is town-owned and has buildable land. So I can guarantee that we're not going to have 30 or 40 of those. It's just not the way it works. I've done this with a bunch of towns, and we always run into some type of obstacles. What we typically run into is, the most kind of common things we run into are sites that are within floodplains, meaning that we have to elevate pump stations and or generators that are there. We have sites that are next to conservation, which require permitting. We have sites that are on private property, which require easements. Well, any one of those can be tackled individually. When you have sites with combined, it becomes much more complicated. It's not impossible, it just becomes much more complicated. So as part of what GHD is doing is we're going to take a kind of a fresh look at the pump station sites within town. We know what makes a good pump station site. We're going to start with the sites that were identified in the CWMP, maybe cull out some of the ones that have multiple issues. For example, a station that was sited near a residential parcel that's in a floodplain, meaning that you're going to have a pump station elevated 10 or 15 feet up in someone's front yard. We know that's going to be problematic. So we're going to do our desktop analysis, come up with sites that we think are very good, obviously working closely with both Griffin and Dan throughout that process. Then we take a drive out, we go look at each one. I know Google Earth Street View is all well and good, but you got to drive out there, at least in my opinion. You got to drive out in your own eyes and see what you're looking at for the pump station itself. And then at that point, once we have some sites selected, I would think that might be an appropriate time to come back to the board and present these sites, because again, if we do the whole model and all of a sudden we say, well, you can't use that site, you can't use that site, you can't use that site, we may have to redo the whole model, which is what we're trying to not do here. We want to kind of minimize the rework. So we really want to get the pump station sites narrowed down as good as we can at the start of this sort of an exercise. So I would propose that GHD comes up with our pump station sites, reviews them with Griffin and Dan. And once the three of us or that group is content, possibly come back to the board and present the pump station sites. Now, if we have to present 30 or 40 sites, that can get a little painful. So that may warrant a dedicated wastewater meeting if in fact the board wants to have that. If not, that's fine too. But I'd like to ask that question and just have a discussion. And that's just the pump stations. You know, any other periodic updates, communication, meetings with the public, workshops, things like that, we're more than willing to do. So with that, I will turn it over to the board and ask for some feedback on what I just presented.
Thank you, Russ. Ed, do you have a question?
No, I just think, you know, his recommendation sounds quite reasonable. And, you know, if you wind up with a lot of material, I think we've already started doing it, setting aside meetings to be dedicated to a single topic. If it's a lot of material to go over and understand.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Russ, there's been a heck of a lot of confusion relative to sewering in general in this town, and I would love to be able to have a much bigger public discussion as a dedicated meeting. I mean, just this past Sunday, there was an article that had all kinds of inaccuracies in it, particularly about the over cost that occurred in East Harwich. The actual number, regardless of what the article said, was we had 3 different areas that we had voted spend $24 million on, and we're $10 million short based on what the estimate was. So our ability to create some sort of confidence, of which you were a part, dictates that we actually have a kind of cathartic release where we lay all our cards on the table and get them to participate in what we're going to be doing moving on, because there was a lot of things. There were a lot of things that went wrong, particularly the money part of it. We only have finished 2/3 of East Harwich as it stands.
Understood.
I would say I'm in agreement on that, Russ, and I think that that's a great start, is identifying the pump stations, and I think that there could be an update to the board once we identify that through Dan and Griffin and yourself, and then we can decide the public involvement piece and a hearing, for lack of better words, but presentation to the public. For me, I think that in its entirety, I think everybody breathed a sigh of relief a couple weeks ago when we voted not to continue to rush towards town meeting decision on DHY. With that decision that we made, I don't want that to be and I'm not saying that you three would do that, but historically, I think the board takes a sigh of relief after town meeting and the amount of work that goes into preparing for town meeting and voting articles, and then we take a break. And in the summertime, we drop down to every 2 weeks as a schedule. For me, it's extremely important that months or half a year ahead of next town meeting, we are flooding the residents with requests for input and plans and costs, so that we're not in the final hour again trying to vote things that are so important to the town. So I hope that we continue to push to educate the public and more for the board, get hard numbers and real plans. So I'd keep the expedited pace, just so that the board has time to educate and have public hearings and get public input. But thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll just conclude that with, these projects, the key to their success is public education and involvement, understanding why we're doing the things that we're doing. I know we have a defined scope of work with X amount of meetings and this, that, and the other thing, but we will have, I'll hold multiple public workshops, and I even offer to meet with residents individually, one-on-one, that may need, you know, that feel more comfortable talking like that. I've done it with multiple other towns. I have no hesitation with giving out my cell phone number. So I'll put that on the table too, and I'm more than happy to meet with anybody and walk through the process with them.
Great. I'm going to make one more statement, then I'm going to call, I believe Sandy McCarty had his hand up to speak. So I am going to reiterate that DHY is something that we're talking about, not everything we're talking about. And East Harwich is still very real to me, and getting the flows to Chatham that we've already negotiated rates for, or at least remapping out East Harwich and getting the CAD modeling. Whatever we're going to do, I don't want to allude to the public at all that all we're focused on is the next phase or the next town and the next deal. For me, this is a very big picture on whether or not we go forward with DHY or not, based on what you guys come up with and alternatives to use what we've already purchased. I'll leave it at that. And then Sandy, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Russ, this is a welcome maybe change to have someone so open to give out their cell number. I would love to connect, and I like to know the nitty gritty. I think you're absolutely right. If the public can understand it, I think it'll bring a lot of reassurance to the public that, you know, it's expensive, but it's what we need to be doing. And so I appreciate that. One question is, how much experience do you have with alternative strategies to wastewater or design? Have you done any other systems, clusters, IAs, PRBs? If you could just speak to that real quick.
Sure, through you, Mr. Chairman. To answer that question, GHD does have, you know, we've done CWMPs for multiple towns that all include alternative assessments of I8 sort of technologies. We're working with several towns now looking at these different strategies. So we do have a lot of experience. Me personally, I do more of the pipelines and pump stations. Some of the other engineers are more involved in that. So we can definitely get with you and showcase you some of the IA systems that we've worked on and that we've done, but we do have substantial experience with that.
Thank you. Yeah, some people might view me as like the alternative guy, but at this point, I don't know what the right thing for the town is. And I think that's the whole point of what Dan has put together is as we go forward to really evaluate everything. And one of my fears was that the previous engineering firm didn't really have much exposure to other ideas. And it was kind of it felt like a one track. And that may be a wrong caricature of them, but that was the feeling I got. And so anyway, thank you for your time, folks.
Thank you, Sandy. Turn it back over to you, Russ.
That was really all I had. I'm happy to answer any other questions. If not, we can probably expect to see me back in, I don't know, maybe a month, hopefully less, and we'll have a fun evening talking about pump station sites.
That's great. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to speak to what Russ has said, you know, this is a very similar process to what Russ, Dan, and I went through when we were looking at the smaller portion where we only were looking at 4 pump stations, and luckily all those 4 pump stations landed in pretty good spots. So it was a very good working process back and forth, and I think in engaging the board, you know, I think my thinking, and I think that's what Russ was saying, is that, you know, Dan, Russ, and I would look for the first flush and make sure we're, you know, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's and make sure things make sense before we bring it to the board in order to kind of minimize the amount of information that we're bringing to the board, because it's going to be a lot no matter what. But we'll try and knock off the things that really don't make sense before it comes to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Griffin.
Mike, real quick.
Sandy, go ahead.
Could I just say thank you, Dan, for getting cedar shingles on those pump houses. I know that was a close call, and you had a big part in that. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Joe, did you have anything to add to this conversation?
Not at all.
Thank you. Ed, you're all set, right?
Yep.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
Hello, Chair.
Go ahead.
Hello, this is Patrick Otten in East Harwich.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I just want to thank the board. I want to thank the board for their openness now to involve the public in all discussions and all aspects of the sewering project. We all need to be part from the ground level up onto what is happening, what the options are, and where we're going with this, instead of just waiting till the end for a final vote. So please keep the public involved at every level, every step along the way, and we will have happy results as a result rather than a conflict. So thank you.
Yep, thank you, Patrick. And I would ask if there's anyone, go ahead, I'm going to start with Joe. Oh, you're muted, Joe.
Getting too used to that. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I just want to alert you that there are two people who are in the queue to speak to the consent agenda item. They are Linda Sabula and our Historical Society Director.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
So I will open up the consent agenda for a motion and a second, and then we will get into conversation. Don?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the application from the Harwich Historical Society for a fun walk on Saturday, May 22nd, 2021.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Linda?
Well, good evening, gentlemen. How are you all?
Good evening.
Do you have any questions? This is the first time we've tried a fun walk, and we are going to make sure that we physically distance people. We're going to having them come off. They would start their walk on a staggered basis on the hour. People have to be pre-registered, and then there will be some games for the children. We don't need a tent. And we will have plenty of volunteers available to keep us all under control.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else want to speak on this?
Marie Zahn, our executive director, was not able to make it this evening, so I'm all you got.
Okay. Well, that was enough. Thank you, Linda. Any questions from the board? All right, we'll go for a roll call vote. Ed?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Good luck with it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, moving on to new business.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Ed.
We sort of jumped over public comments and announcements.
I didn't hear at the beginning of the meeting that anyone signed up to speak for public comments and announcements, but I apologize for that. Ed, go ahead if you have any comments or announcements.
Yeah, I just, last week I did mention that the Cape Cod Hospital Blood Donor Center was doing a 2-day donor collection here in Harwich at the police department. And it appears that people responded to the call to come out and donate blood because both days are completely full of donors. That being said, the donor, for the folks at the donor room that I talked to, said that they are still can use as many donors coming in either at the hospital to the blood room there or to other donation collection events in neighboring towns. The supply of blood is very low, and specifically the O negative and O positive blood supplies are significantly low. So I'd urge people to take that into consideration.
Great. Thank you, Ed. Thank you for that very important announcement. Anyone else on that wishes to speak for public comment announcement? Okay, moving on to new business. Normally, I'm the one that just starts reading motions. So some of these ones in the beginning, if anyone wants to start with a motion, or if you want Joe to open these topics up, we can go that route. But
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the chair to sign the Massachusetts Emergency Management Grant reimbursement for $3,491.33.
Second.
it moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm going to do a roll call vote. Ed,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I am an aye. On to
Mr.
B.
Chair, yeah, Mr. Chair, on item B, I move that we accept and authorize the chair to sign the Massachusetts Emergency Management Grant reimbursement for $30,500.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ed,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I am an aye.
Mr.
C.
Chair, on item C, I move we approve the tax bill insert for flood insurance information.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Ed,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I am an aye. I am asking that we hold D. I spoke to the town administrator about this today. So we're gonna bring this back. There was some conflicting language in the request and the contract, but I do think it warrants conversation with the chair before we put this forward. I do want to say, because it is on there and it's not related to David LeBlanc, but it's the board has been presented in the past, and the town administrator has been presented in the past, and I know we took it up on the department head level in the not so distant future. I mean past, but we need to really push for people to take their vacations. And in a pandemic, this one that's before us tonight happens to be our direct hire, which is why the request is to us. But this selectman believes in a pandemic, and with the amount of time we have had off, and I'm not singling people out, but it's not, unless you're told you can't take vacation, this is costing the town money. And I think that this is a conversation that the board needs to have with its direct hires, and that vacations need to be taken and not carried over. So with that, I'm going to ask that this one be brought back after Larry have a conversation with the town administrator and David to iron out a few things. So moving on to E. Joe, before Don reads the motion for E or Ed, I just would ask the question that I always ask: is there a hearing or anything in the pipeline for this establishment?
There are no hearings scheduled, nor are there any known alleged violations.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we approve the 2021 seasonal all alcohol liquor license renewal for the Belmont Condominium Beach, doing business as the Beach, 1 Belmont Road, Harwich.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
With any previous restrictions that might have been imposed upon it.
Even you forgot.
But I remembered in time for you not to point it out.
All right, roll call vote. Ed?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I am an aye.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the 2021 season Common Vittlers license renewal for PEM Funds Incorporated, doing business, Foods Incorporated, doing business as Harwich Port Dairy Queen, 441 Route 28, with any previous restrictions that were imposed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call. Ed?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Before we read G, I'm going to add this to my list of questions. Is there any problem with this establishment, any hearings in play, any entertainment license violations, or anything that's pending for the board to review?
None that I'm aware of, Mr. Chairman, either no hearings pending and no known alleged violations.
Thank you.
With that, Mr. Chair, I'd move that, let's see here. We approve the 2021 seasonal weekday and Sunday entertainment license renewal for miniature golf, the Harbor Glen Miniature Golf at 168 Route 28, with any restrictions that have previously been placed upon it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, roll call. Ed?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I am an aye.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes for July 15th, 2019 as written.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Ed,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I am an aye. Aye, and I believe this one would be Michael Locke, but I would start with Joe Powers, if you have anything to start with.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my apologies to Attorney Sharon Everett for dismissing her early and completely forgetting that she was an integral part of this discussion. Mercifully, she remembered, so thank you, Sharon. Sharon has been working at my request with Michael Locke on behalf of the Harwich Conservation Trust. And Mr. Chairman, through you, I would defer to Ms. Everett to update the board as to where things stand with her discussions with Harwich Conservation Trust relative to this restriction.
Okay, thank you. Sharon, go ahead. And you got to unmute yourself.
My apology. I sent Michael my edits to the conservation restriction this afternoon. I believe all of them are fine, except that Michael and I are negotiating about if there's a violation, how long the trust has to fix the problem before the town can take either corrective action itself or bring an action in court to compel the trust to cure the violation. I think right now we are struggling between whether to give the trust 60 days or 90 days. 60 days is the usual, so I am reluctant to give 90 days in mind, just that's my personal opinion. But I understand that if there are violations that require the trust to go to the Conservation Commission and it takes longer there, then for those circumstances, a 90-day period within which they can cure may be reasonable. But that, as I said, 60 days is typical.
Thank you, Sharon. And I would then go to Michael Locke. Actually, let's see if board members have any questions on that piece. Ed?
Nope.
Tom?
Nope.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Michael Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Attorney Everett, appreciate you working on this project together. And Mr. Powers, thank you for facilitating the town review of this conservation restriction. And I think Attorney Everett summed up the question well relative to notice if there happens to be a violation of the conservation restriction. So just to give you some background as to why I would prefer 90 days, and Attorney Everett touched on a part of that, and that is if any of corrective action requires review by the Conservation Commission. I attended your meeting about a week ago, and one of the items that was mentioned in passing on one of the issues is that the Conservation Commission hearings are very full. They've got quite a workload, and that can mean that sometimes one cannot necessarily get on the agenda as quickly as one might wish to. And since this property, approximately 6.65 acres, is not only located 100% within the watershed of Sam Pond and Herring River, but also within 0 to 100, has land within the 0 to 100 foot buffer of a wetland resource area, which we know the 0 to 100 foot buffer is under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. If any violation of the conservation restriction might occur in that area, we would have to go to the Conservation Commission. And so more time to address any possible infringement of the conservation restriction terms would be better. We all want the same thing, to preserve the natural elements of this property. The reason why we're seeking conservation restriction in partnership with the town is because it's part of the trust's state grant application to the state's conservation partnership grant program, which requires a conservation restriction. In this case, HCT thought its natural partner would be the town in holding that conservation restriction. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Michael. Don, any questions?
No, I do not.
Ed?
So I guess my question is, what potential violations would we be looking at?
It's unknown. Well, you know, as an example, so just to back up a step, so the owner of the property will be Harwich Conservation Trust. It will be subject to this conservation restriction held by the town. And so if there happened to be another party that, let's say, clear cut a portion of the property, and let's say it was within the 0 to 100 foot to the wetland resource that's to the west of the property, then it would be incumbent upon Harwich Conservation Trust as the property owner to abide by that overlay protection that is provided by the conservation restriction. Conservation restriction does not allow, let's say, that hypothetical example of that infringement, that clear cut. So Harwich Conservation Trust would have to take corrective action subject to the terms in the conservation restriction, and hence more time to have in addressing that hypothetical would be better.
So I guess what you're saying is a potential violation would be somebody who doesn't own the property coming on your property and doing a clear cut?
I'm using that as an example.
That person must have a lot of chutzpah to enter in on property that they don't own.
Sometimes actions take place on properties where folks don't necessarily that they known that they've crossed over onto someone else's property.
Corinne, care to respond to anything?
It's completely within the selectmen's discretion as to whether you want to give 90 days. Since the property is uniquely located so that all of it is within 0 to 100 feet, I do agree with Michael that 90 days makes more sense. So I would revise the conservation restriction to go to 90 days, where what's required to fix it is that the trust goes to the Conservation Commission. Michael, if that's acceptable to you, that's the cure. Then you give 90 days.
Okay, I think that's reasonable to me. Based on
I would move to approve the conservation restriction on the 6.65 acre property at Sand Pond Woodlands as written with the 90-day provision added.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion. Sharon, that's I think I just heard you say that is okay. And that was the only thing that was holding this up. Is that accurate?
I believe so. Michael, speak now or hold your peace.
That's accurate. Thank you all for your work on this project.
Okay. Joe, do you have anything to add?
Nothing further, thank you.
Great. All right, we'll go to a roll call vote. Ed?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Great work, Michael. Another nice piece of property saved.
Well, thank you all very much for your work on this. Thank you, Attorney Everett, as well. And it's great to be able to have this partnership continue between the town and HCT on these important properties.
Yeah, and thank you, Sharon, for coming back.
Now you can really leave, I promise.
Okay, good night.
Okay, we're on to contracts. I don't know how much, does the board want explanation from Joe, or do we want to go right into motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Ed.
I move that we approve to execute a contract with Five Star Golf Cart and Utility Vehicles LLC to lease 80 golf carts and 6 utility vehicles for the Cranberry Valley Golf Course per the following terms. 1, temporary gas carts, April 1st to August 31st, 2021, with a revenue share of 83.25% of gross revenue for the town and 16.75% for the lessor. And 2, electric carts, September 1st, 2021, to December 31st, 2025, with a revenue share of 60% of gross revenue for the town and 40% for the lessor.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Any discussion? I saw Roman on here earlier. I don't know if he wants to, I don't see him now. Any discussion? Griffin, you have anything?
The only thing, it's a little confusing only because we're trying to time this up with the installation of our electric charger grid. So that's the reason why we have the temporary fleet before we get the permanent fleet towards the end of the year. But I commend Roman for his work in getting this done. His initial proposal, I think, was even a little more confusing, but we were able to get together and work through it. And this makes a lot of sense to me. So I look for the board's endorsement. Thank you.
Good. My only comment is 83.25% to the town and 16.75 to them, and 60-40 split. The top one seems like a better deal for the town. But I'm sure that was vetted.
It is, and that's for older carts. You know, we're getting a whole new fleet of carts, which is going to cost us a lot less money on gas. So I think that there's a savings there, and I think Roman can probably speak more eloquently to it than I can.
Hey, Roman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, you're absolutely correct. The terms on the temporary fleet are much better. That's an older fleet of gas golf carts, which are much less valuable. The new golf carts that we are ordering that are electric lithium battery have a lot of efficiencies that the town will benefit tremendously from the efficiencies that we see from that fleet. As far as man hours, it will be reduced because we'll be able to electronically ranger the golf course. There will be no need to fuel them. They'll be charged with solar energy. So there's a lot of efficiencies there, but the actual cost of the golf cart is much more expensive up front.
Thank you, Roman. Any further discussion? Joe?
Just very quickly, if I may, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So the great message that comes out of this evening is that Cranberry Valley Golf Course will be looking to roll out the fleet of electric carts in this season, this year, which is great work. And that's a testament to Roman, Sean, their entire team, and certainly Megan and Griffin and everyone that has worked on that thus far. And I do want to speak to the temporary. That is a great deal for the reasons they said. It's also a great deal because both of these are coming off of state contract, and we were under contract with a previous vendor. So this is a better option all around for the town, and it gets us everything we need to get. So I wholeheartedly endorse the work of Megan and Griffin working with Roman on this project.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Okay, I'm going to go to a roll call vote. Ed?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Moving on to the town administrator's report.
Just a thank you to the board for your efforts throughout this season to get us to the warrant at this point. I truly appreciate your guidance and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Selectmen's report, starting with Ed.
Nope.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joe, I'm assuming that the warrant would be available, especially the election warrant for us to sign tomorrow?
Absolutely. I've made all the edits that you voted this evening. I've added the 2 sketch plans that were referenced, and I've updated all of our materials.
Okay. And
so
then
we will have a signature page available.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Chair, doubling back to what I said before, because it was more than what fit in that conversation topic. The article in the Cape Cod Times, since it focused on DHY, I just want to make absolutely certain that everybody understands. The $10 million was because they underestimated what it would cost to finish that. We got a $24 million approval from town meeting, and it was broken up at the contractor's request, that's CDM Smith, into 3 parts. We were only able to do 2 of them, which only constituted 2/3 of it. In addition to that, they are the same vendor who has provided cost estimates for DHY, and that wasn't made all that clear in the article, which is another reason to vet this more thoroughly. But third of all, it also alluded to the fact that the pumping station would be in Yarmouth, and that is not, in fact, the truth. Yarmouth is going to use what we would be using if we all threw in together. Dennis is building that in their industrial park area. But I don't know how many people read it, but I definitely want to make sure the public understands what's really going on, and I also want everybody to understand what we discussed before. This is many, many tens of millions of dollars involved in all of these things. 75% of the cost of DHY is going to come from us putting pipes in our own town, not part of the DHY agreement. When we borrow that, how much it is, and all these other things are basically tied up with GHD in their analysis. And the public this time should probably be along for the ride, because that was quite a shock to everybody when we got those numbers. And I think everybody on the board would agree that the public was not well served by not knowing what was going on until it was basically too late. We built what we built with the money we had in East Harwich. I don't ever want to see that happen again without the public being involved all along the way.
Thank you, Don. My only comment is it's based off of earlier comments related to the warrant and committees and people that work really hard to put things out for the public to view. And I really do respect Ed McManus's comments on that, and I really do respect the committees that worked really hard to bring these things forward. I've said it from the beginning, and to be consistent, I'll say it in closing. We're having a Maytown meeting outside. New England weather is not always that cooperative. Debate, and I've said it, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Selectman Howell pointed out there's been a lack of public participation. I believe that, if we make a quorum, it's not going to be by very many people. And I think it was a responsible decision of the board not to include things that could lengthen town meeting any more than 49 articles already will. So there's no disrespect meant to any of the committee members or anyone that worked hard at putting these things together, and we will bring them forward next year so long as we're not in the middle of a pandemic. But I do appreciate all the work that went into them. And I also would say that, as I said previously, the board fizzes out after town meeting and takes a little bit of a break. And then, as Ed McManus pointed out a few meetings ago, we shouldn't be bringing these things up a month before town meeting to start to educate the public and working on them so quickly. We need to start working on them right after town meeting so that we're prepared to go to town meeting. With that, I would go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, well, it's not only educating the public, but in some cases, the rush to go through the articles for the warrant amongst the board. We were rushing to educate ourselves, and if we would start talking about some of these things in the fall before Christmas, I think we would be much better off.
I agree, totally agree. With that, I would make or ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded to adjourn. Roll call, Ed.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
And I am an aye.
Great meeting, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Mr. Clerk.